4 months ago, we just had our first hire, and I've learned a lot from the first hire, and I want to make this video to basically show what you should be looking for if you're an agency and you're just starting out and you're looking for your first or maybe your second hire, or maybe you're already hiring but you're not happy with the people you're currently working with. This video is for you. So the problem is when you give the wrong hire, right? Not only is it going to waste your time, it's also going to waste your money. It can lead to a damaged brand reputation, and worst of all, they can also leak your information. So it's very, very crucial that you follow these 7 tips that I'm going to outline here to make sure you hire the right people. So tip number 1 is you should always be able to see what they're doing, what they're working on, when they're working on, how long they're taking, right? Everything should be visible to you, at least in the beginning. Later on, when you can trust them more, you can, give them a little bit more leniency, but in the beginning, you want to have all eyes on them. Because the truth is, you're probably not going to find the best person on your first hire. You're probably going to have to let go a bunch of people before you find someone that's actually going to change your business. So there's so many people who they hire someone, they're paying them on time, and then they're not seeing any results. They're not doing the work. They're taking longer than they expect, all because they have no clue what's actually going on. They give them a task, and then they just expect that they'll do the work themselves and they'll get back to you when they're done. If you're not tracking, if you're not reviewing what they're doing, you're basically just flying blind. So always, whether you set up a Google Meet recording, whether you have some other different softwares and tools out there that can help you track, you need to have something in place so that you can always know what they're working on, how they're doing it, and give them improvements and feedback when they need. The second tip is motivation, right? Never ever pay on a basis that does not motivate them to work harder. So always try and go for a performance-based pay over a flat fee, because a flat fee just shows them that, hey, I have a certain amount of time, I just need to get this time done, and I'm out, right? This is regardless of what the person's morale is. Even if you're working on a performance base, regardless of your morale, you're gonna end up working a lot faster if you know that the faster you work, the better performance you deliver, the more your pay is going to end up being. This is very, very crucial. Now, a lot of times the tasks are very different. You can't always go ahead and get it in a situation where you're paying them per performance. So in that case, you want to do it hourly, right? So for hourly, you want to make sure that you are giving them a certain amount of tasks and you're giving them a deadline. And there needs to be certain bonuses and certain things that happen when they hit a deadline and when they don't hit a deadline. Because you can set up deadlines, and if you just miss it and nothing ends up happening, it's basically just the same thing as just doing a flat fee. And the reason you want to do hourly over a weekly or monthly pay is because the problem with paying monthly or weekly is that they're going to be incentivized to take days off, right? So one day they might be working 8 hours, the other day they might be working 6 hours, versus if you're paying them on an hour basis, they're going to be much more motivated to actually, maybe if they're feeling a little bit sick, they won't call in. Tip number 3 is you need to understand the risks of hiring cheap labor, right? So the last thing you want to do is hire someone for cheap and then give them full access to your systems, full access to your clients, full access to all the tools you have, and just hope that they won't do anything bad. The truth is, all of us get pressured by money, and the truth is, if let's say you're hiring someone for $5 an hour, if someone pays them $10 an hour, most of the people are just going to go ahead and just, whether they need to leak your information, they need to work for someone else, they're going to go ahead and do it. There's been countless amount of times where I've heard stories where people work for someone else, they're like, screw this guy, I'm gonna go work for this other guy who's paying me more. They steal all their resources, steal their clients, steal their tools, and either they start their own business that way or they end up going working for someone else. So all of your client systems, internal infos, anything that is you don't want out there publicly, you should always make sure that you're giving them the least amount of important information that they need in order to complete the task. So for me, for example, a lot of times what I would do is, let's say we need to create an invoice for a client, I would tell them to just write down the deliverables and just write down the date. I would put the client name myself, I put the email myself, I put the prices myself, right? Last thing you want to see is some guy quitting just because he realized that you're paying him 10 times less than what you're making. So not only do you want to limit access, but you always want to audit everything. Check their history, check their mail, see what type of conversations are going on. If you're doing the Google Meet recordings like I did, make sure you're watching them every now and then. And you're probably watching this, you're like, okay, but I don't want to just keep being on this guy's head. Like, the whole point of me hiring someone is like, I want to get this out of my head. I want someone else to handle this. Right, that's true. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're able to trust that person out. I did not give, blind access until at least 3 months into the hire. So tip number 4 is knowing the difference between a decision maker hire and a task doer hire. So the task doer hire is basically someone who you're going to give a set amount of instructions. They're going to put zero brain thought into it. It's basically just click this button, do this, and that's the task. Probably those type of tasks are the ones you have to do again and again and again, right? The decision maker ones are basically people who you tell them that a task needs to be done and they're going to figure out how to do it. But those decision maker people, don't ever expect them to work for cheap. Either you want to, give them a nice pay for what they're doing, or in most cases, I usually do some type of commission deal or some type of percentage in the company, something like that. So if you're expecting a task doer, someone you're paying, in a third world country, you're paying them 5 times less than what the minimum wage would be here in the US, and you're expecting them to do the same amount of work that a decision maker person would do, you have wrong expectations. You need to make sure that when you're hiring task doers, you specifically have every single thing outlined. For all the tasks that we had them do, we either had a screen recording, very detailed, of us doing the task so they know exactly what they need to do, or even better, you make a dedicated video tutorial showing, let's say, if you're on Mac, do this, if you're on MacBook, do this, if you get the email verification code, do this, if you don't get the verification code, do this. Very, very detailed, either a video or you can create documentation, something that you want to make the documentation in a way so that if that person ends up leaving, you can copy paste the documentation to your next hire and they'll be able to do the task exactly as the previous person did. Tip number 6, communication is extremely important. So there's so many times people will hire someone from a third world country and they just don't speak English, and because of that they waste hours and hours and days because they heard something wrong or you said something in a way that they didn't understand, and because of that miscommunication, something ends up going wrong. When I'm hiring, my first interview is basically just 5 minutes long. The only thing I'm looking at is if they know good English or not. If they know good English, then we'll go to a second interview to basically find out, okay, what are their skills, what are all that stuff. First interview, all I'm looking at is I'm just having a conversation with them, asking some random questions, trying to know how their communication skills are. Give them a small little task after, hey, can you send me your LinkedIn resume after this interview? I can't tell you, like 60% of people just forgot to send it afterwards. And those people, you don't want to work with, because if they can't send you a PDF after your very first interaction with them, how do you expect them to deliver tasks on time months down later in the business? You also need to make sure you're doing regular updates and calls with them. So it's not just like text, like, hey, what's the update? You want to be on a call with them. All right, screen share. Let me see what you've been working on. How did you complete this task? What's going on here? Why is this task taking so long? What part are you stuck here? So without any communication, without any strategic discussion, you're going to end up in so many different loopholes where they're trying to do a task that if you would have just had a conversation, you would have given them the solution within 5 minutes, and they just spend the entire week trying to figure that thing out themselves. So that's the key as well. Just don't try and hire a bunch of people. You need to go through this strategically. Get one person dedicated to one task only. Once they're professional at it, once you have great documentation, move on to the other task. Once that person is completely full with their schedule, then you move on to the next hire, and so on. So tip number 7 is we've been talking about how to go ahead and actually make sure that they're doing the right work, but it's vice versa as well. You want to make sure that you're treating these people right. So it's not always about mistrust, right? It's about building systems that will actually make them want to achieve further in your company, make them actually want to hit their deadlines, make them actually want to wake up each morning and be interested in working with you. So treat your hires well, create fair policies, create fair bonuses, ask them how they're doing. If they're having a bad day, if they're sick, let them take the day off. I've given paid vacations many times, I've given paid sick days many times, because the truth is when you show that you genuinely care about someone, they're genuinely going to show care back. If you're just there on a strictly business basis where you're like, hey, you have to complete this task in these amount of minutes, then they're only going to put that much output back in. It's a two-way street, even with your hires, and so even though you're paying them, you still want to have a really good, strong communication and connection with them. But with that being said, you still want to make sure that you're protecting yourself, right? You want to make sure that a lot of times I've seen people that share accounts with people they hire. They give them like some access to something that they don't really need, and because of that, it ends up backfiring on them. I can't tell you the amount of times that someone just gave access to their admin account to an employee, even though they could have created an employee account, and they just went ahead and stole all their customers. So the lesson is, care about them, but make sure you have a red line and you're protecting the business as well. And as I said, those are the 7 tips I have to hiring people. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a thumbs up. My name is Hassan. I'm the founder of True the AI. We help businesses get more clients so that way they can focus on fulfillment. And I'll see you in the next video.